Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to make a whole bunch of little gussets for the fuselage, and then we're going to go ahead and finish up the subwing. Alright, the first part of this video is going to be about how I went ahead and designed and cut these things out and made them, because they're all going to be identical in size and shape. Now, personally, years ago, back in the mid-90s, I worked for a company called ESP Heavy Manufacturing for a few years, and I was their design and development prototype, whatever kind of guy. So with my prior machine work, it was really easy for me to go ahead, jump in, and make products and help set things up for production. So anytime I go into do something like this where I'm making gussets, I know that these gussets are going to work. A single gusset will work in all positions on the fuselage. It's the way that they're being made. So if the tolerances aren't, we're not working with 1/1000th of an inch tolerance. Just get me close. If I can come in at, like, say, I don't know, 10-15 thousandths of an inch, like the thickness of a matchbook cover, I'm fine with that. It'll probably be tighter than that though. So this was just a prototype, and all I did is on the fuselage, let's see how well I can get you guys somewhat pointed in the right direction. Let's just do it up top side here, because we're still missing the diagonals, because 1, 2, 3 of them broke off. So what I did on the bottom side, because I don't think you're going to be able to see that. Let me just bring it down here on the bottom, just so hopefully you can see it. I came in and got everything lined up the way I wanted it to, and then made my marks. I just made some simple marks on each side, and it was really set up for this part down here, which of course you're not going to be able to see because it's all going to be hidden behind it. But when this gets glued into position, and I'll show you when it's getting done. When all these get glued into position, you're going to have a glue surface, so contactor points down here on the bottom part of the frame going out, and then up here to the uprights and the diagonals. So this will all be glued together as one. And then once this is done on the inside, I will just go ahead and I'll probably just cut them out of balsa, some 1/4 inch balsa. It'll be some diagonals that are going to come down and join the side with the bottom, just so that way we have a lot more purchase structurally on the inside, because once again, I don't trust the wood glue, and I don't want to go ahead and have to cut all this apart and then re-glue everything back together again. Just as long as I can go ahead and reinforce everything the way it should be done regardless, I don't think there's going to be an issue on this once all the fabric gets put on and put into place, because the fabric, when you do a plane out of fabric with nitrate dope, that bonds the fabric to the whole outside structure of the plane. So the fabric itself becomes a structural member of the plane. All right, I apologize for the lack of light over here. My little light bulb burned out, my LED, and it didn't just burn out, it really burned out. So let's see how well this stuff shows up on the camera. All right, these are the pieces so far that I've already went ahead and started cutting the slots in. Now I've got 16 of these things I've got to make, and so I intentionally cut out 20 of them, because you knew there was probably going to be a mistake somewhere, so it's better to have a couple too many than 1 or 2 not enough. So what I did first is I came in and just cut these out. So these are 1 inch by 1 inch squares. It's just a very easy way to make things work. So from the template that I originally set up, where I was going ahead just to do the first prototype, it was close enough to 1 inch, so I said we're going to cut out 1 inch squares and then set everything else up to work on the same 1 inch squares. So what I'll do, I'll just go through, I don't know, let's just go through one of these things just so you don't have to deal with all the noise. So go ahead, fire it up. So what that does is it just comes on in and then just pretty much cuts so that we're just a click over 1/4 of an inch across. And then I'll just come over here, grab my little homemade chisel, put it down, take the hammer, give it a nice little pop. And there we go. Now that part's done, ready to be glued into place. It's not that hard, it's just the initial setup, just doing it. That took probably about 2 minutes to get that thing set up. So once all these little pieces are cut out, I'll go ahead and I'll show you how I'm going to turn them into little houses. All right, seeing that I've got the little doorways cut out, let me show you how I'm going to go ahead and cut the roof. It starts off with a piece of 1/8 inch stock, just a piece of balsa stock that's back here. And I slid it in enough, and all this is going to do, it's going to act as a backer, so when I'm cutting the light plywood, it's not going to try to delaminate it. All right, so now what I'm going to cut that on is my little slider, my little 90-degree slider. What is on here is a 45-degree piece, so I went ahead, and this is something I've had for, I don't know, probably 10 years or more down here. It's just another piece of pretty much light plywood with a little pin in the back side, and that slides down into the pin on the board. And when you put this in, it becomes my 45-degree cut. So that way, if I need to cut anything at 45, I just go ahead and rest it up against the side and just go through with it. So what I put here was another little piece of light ply. I cut a corner off, went ahead and then glued this into place where this little square is going to be sitting to make the 45-degree slants on the top of it. So when I go ahead and cut it, it's going to end up looking like this. And that's it. That's my little gussets. All I got to do is just do a little bit of a sand to get rid of a little bit of fraying on each side. And these are ready to glue into place. All right, I've got the bottom gussets already on, working on the top, and this is on the left side. Now, what I was doing off camera, you can see how nice and purty this looks. It's supposed to be 2 1/8 inches from the end. We are at 2 1/8 inches, if you can see it nicely. So you can see how much I had to slide these out. So this right here is what they should look like. This is how they look when the other guy did them. So if you can see this mark right here, that's 2 1/8 inches. He had them both set at 2 3/4 inches back. And I think that's why he was having such a hard time with that subwing. So what we're going to do, because that's part of this, what we're doing on this little episode here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spin this thing around because I got to get the gussets on this side done too. I'm going to spin it around, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Now the way I'm doing it, as much as I don't like doing it this way, I'm using propane. Just going to come on in, get everything heated up, and then start unwinding it. And because you can see he still has the copper wire just sticking out. So all I do is I just come in, pretty much just melt the solder inside and just start unwinding it, and it all comes out really nicely. And then I'll just have to, best way to say it, I'll have to convince this to move out to here. It's not going to be happy. It did it over there. Yeah, I'm going to make it happen over here too. And what I'm using, there's my copper wire. I normally keep a bunch of this stuff here, so whenever I'm making some old school stuff, that's how you solder stuff together. Just go ahead and wrap it and then solder on top of it, and it comes out like this, and it's all locked in tight, but sure looks a lot nicer. I kind of figured I'd bring it back in just for a little, if you get into a situation where you're trying to wind this, and of course you need, you know, 3 hands to hold everything. Just get everything lined up. Just take a small little zip tie. Just put a zip tie around it, because we're right down here at our indicator, which is 2 1/8 inches, so everything's locked in tight. And I'm just go ahead and winding the copper wire around right now, but it held everything in place with that zip tie just to get the axle lined up between these two hard points for the suspension on it. So you just keep winding. As soon as this thing's all ready to go ahead and solder, I'll bring you right back. All right, hopefully everything is all set up so you can get a good look at it. This is just some paste flux, some soldering flux. Even though this stuff does have flux in it, I still throw more down in here because we've got a big gap on in between, and the solder is going to go down between all the wires and lock everything in place. And I'm putting the flux on because the flux is pretty much an acid base that goes in and etches the metal, so that way the solder sticks nicely to it. And all I do is I just put a bunch on the top, because as soon as I hit this thing with some flame, it's all going to get wicked in around everything. And it's just a matter of just getting enough heat in there until the solder starts melting and pulling in. And as soon as it starts to flow, it's going to flow really nice. Here we go. I don't know if you can see it, but it's all the copper wire is it's almost like a capillary action. It's just pulling the solder in. And that's it. Now the solder itself is liquid and it's going to drip on the floor, so I'm just going to kind of wipe it off. Because now the flux itself, it's corrosive, so we'll keep attacking the metal. There's a bunch of different things you can go ahead and get rid of the remaining flux with. A lot of times I'll just come in with some right here, just regular lacquer thinner. So lacquer thinner itself does break down the flux. So now that it's still hot, I'll allow it to cool down, because it's not, I don't know if it's 100% set yet. I don't know how well you can see that, but that's what that's supposed to look like. So that one went down, and I think because everything looked good before we started, we were at 2 1/8 inches. And we're just a little bit over, but just a little bit over is better than, we're still, they wanted you between 2 1/8 and 2 1/4, and right now it's at 2 3/16. So we're good on this. So that's pretty much how you do it, and easy peasy. All right, as everyone can see, the fuselage is outside, sitting outside in the sun. It's going to be about 60 degrees today, so I figured let it go out there and work on its tan. What I'm going to do is, because I've got, as you can see, I've got the plan set up, and there's the subwing. It's going to be a little more complex than I was hoping. So what I decided to do is, let's just call this a video. So even though we only got the gussets put in, I also got the landing gear properly straightened out and the distance between the landing gear struts. So I've just decided we're going to make a whole video out of just repairing the subwing. Just because there's a lot more going on, and I've got to break everything down, and I'd like to give you guys a better explanation of what went wrong and what we're going to do to fix it. So let's just go ahead and call this a video, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm back down in the shop.